The planet Halor burned like a wounded star. Above its surface, violet storms churned and flashed, painting the black sky with rivers of light. The ground below was a sea of cracked crystal and molten glass, still glowing from wars long ended and never forgotten. The air shimmered with energy, every breath tasting like metal and thunder. Captain Elias Vance stood at the edge of his small landing craft, boots sinking slightly into the dust that glittered like broken diamonds. Behind him, the hull still smoked from entry. Ahead of him stretched a wasteland that once held a city, 1,000 towers now melted into black spires. He had come alone. No backup, no fleet, no way back if things went wrong. That was how humans always seemed to do the impossible, by walking straight into it. The message had been clear. The Zarathai Queen wishes to speak to a human. No one else volunteered. They said the Zarathai burned their enemies alive with thoughts alone. They said their queen Sarathka, she of light and thorns, had ended the first invasion by turning every soldier's heart to stone. Elias had seen what was left of those men. He walked among statues of perfect horror, faces frozen mid-scream, eyes still open. And yet, when command asked for a volunteer, his hand had risen before his mind had time to stop it. Because if no one tried, the war would never end. He started walking toward the ruins. Each step echoed softly against the ground, the dust crackling beneath his boots like static. His visor read dangerous radiation, no breathable oxygen, surface instability. He switched the alarms off. The silence that followed was almost comforting. He'd fought in 3 wars before this. He had lost his crew twice, his ship once, and more friends than he could count. War had become a shadow that followed him, faithful, cold, and patient. But peace had become a dream that only existed in other people's voices. Now, for the first time, it didn't seem impossible. Because something had asked for peace. And he was here to listen. The wind changed. It carried with it a low hum almost like music. The light in the sky bent, focusing downward. The air in front of him rippled, forming shapes, first smoke, then crystal, then the outline of a woman. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Tall, shining, her skin like glass lit from within by shifting colors. Her eyes were twin suns, their light soft but unyielding. And when she spoke, her voice filled the air like a song made of sorrow and flame. "Human," she said, and the words seemed to tremble between them. "You stand on sacred ground, you breathe the air of our dead. Why have you come?" Elias bowed his head slightly, his suit's metal joints groaned. "To talk." Her glow flickered. "Talk," she repeated as if the word was foreign. "Your kind came before with ships that bled fire. They talked with weapons. Their voices screamed through destruction." He looked up at her and his voice was calm. "That's why I'm here, to stop it, to stop us." For a long time, neither moved. The sky rumbled overhead. Sarathka stepped closer, her feet leaving faint trails of light on the ground. "Do you speak for your world, human?" she asked, her tone sharp but curious. "No," Elias said simply, "but I can listen for it." The queen tilted her head. The air around her pulsed softly like a living heartbeat. "You are fragile," she murmured. "You come alone to a world that does not want you. You bleed easily. You die quickly. Why risk so much?" Elias smiled faintly beneath his cracked visor. "Because sometimes it's the fragile ones who care the most." Her gaze softened for the briefest moment, so slight that he almost thought he imagined it. "Strange," she whispered almost to herself. "So small, yet your spirit burns brighter than the sun's." They walked through the ruins together. The queen moved with quiet grace, every step leaving echoes of light in her wake. Elias followed, his human footsteps dull against the glittering ground. All around them were the remains of her people, structures like frozen waves, statues of soldiers made of crystal, halls that sang when the wind touched them. "This was my home," Sarathka said softly, Before your kind came, before the sky turned to ash. He looked at the ruins. I've seen what war does, he said quietly. To humans, to anyone, it eats everything, hope, beauty, even the reason you started fighting. She turned toward him, her luminous eyes unreadable. Then why do you still fight? Because sometimes you don't get to stop, he said. Not until someone else believes you can. Her expression shifted, something between anger and sorrow. And you believe I am that someone. He looked up at the sky, where lightning carved paths through violet clouds. I don't know, he admitted, but you're the only one who asked to talk. The queen stood in silence. Her light dimmed, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the remains of her empire slept beneath the ash. At last she said softly, "You are brave, human, or foolish. I cannot yet tell which." Elias laughed once, dry and weary. Usually both. Something like a smile touched her luminous face, a small, shimmering curve of light. And for the first time in countless years, the wind over Halor's dead plains carried something other than the sound of storms. It carried hope. The next morning came not with sunlight, but with a quiet shimmer in the clouds. Halor had no true dawn. The sky was always painted in shades of storm. But the queen's citadel began to glow, and that was how Elias knew the day had started. He had spent the night in a half-collapsed hall of crystal. His campfire flickered weakly inside a cracked metal bowl, its smoke rising into the shadows. The air was cold, sharp, and dry. He could see his breath. Elias had not slept much. The voice of the queen still echoed in his mind, her words carrying the weight of an entire world. You are brave or foolish. He smiled to himself as he packed up. Probably both, he murmured again. When he stepped outside, she was already waiting. Sarathka stood at the edge of the ruins, her body framed by rising mist. She looked less like a ruler now, and more like something ancient and lonely, light given a face. Her glow dimmed and brightened with the rhythm of her breathing. Human, she said softly, her voice carried by the wind. You survived the night. Few outsiders can stand Halor's storms. Elias shrugged. I've been through worse. My first command ship was half on fire for 3 days. This feels like vacation. Her lips, if they could be called that, moved in something close to a smile. Your humor is strange. I do not understand it. That's okay, he said. Most people don't. They began to walk through what had once been the heart of her kingdom. The streets were made of smooth black glass, cracked like frozen water. Towers of pale crystal leaned and bent, their surfaces alive with faint blue veins of energy. The wind made them sing, a haunting, endless melody that filled the air with sadness. These were my people's homes, Sarathka said. They lived in harmony with the storms. We shaped the lightning, tamed the winds. Halor was alive then, a living jewel in the stars. What happened? Elias asked quietly. She stopped walking. The light in her chest flickered darker. Your kind happened. He didn't answer right away. There was nothing he could say that wouldn't sound hollow. The silence between them felt heavy, like the air before thunder. Finally he said, That's why I'm here, to make sure it doesn't happen again. She turned to face him, her eyes blazing like twin suns. And what makes you think you can change what your armies began? Because I'm not here to fight, Elias said. His voice didn't rise, but there was steel in it. I came to listen, to learn what we destroyed so maybe we can build something better. Sarathka studied him, her face unreadable. Then slowly she said, You speak as though one man can carry the guilt of an entire world. Elias met her gaze. Someone has to try. They reached the grand bridge of Halor, a long, broken stretch of silver that crossed a canyon filled with violet mist. Beneath it, lightning rolled like a restless sea. As they walked across, Sarathka spoke again. There was a time when I believed in peace, she said. Before the fires, before your ships turned our sky black, I reached out to the stars. I offered alliance, trade, knowledge. Her voice trembled, the light around her body flaring brighter. And in return, I was given war. My people died believing I had failed them. Elias stopped walking. Maybe you didn't fail them, he said quietly. Maybe the universe just wasn't ready for something good. Her head tilted slightly. You speak with such sadness. Have you lost someone too? He let out a slow breath. Everyone, he said, and everything that made me feel like I still belonged somewhere. The queen's light dimmed. For a moment the storm above them softened, the wind falling silent. Then she said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Perhaps we are not so different, you and I." They reached the far end of the bridge, where a tower rose like a spear into the sky. At its base burned a gentle blue fire. Sarathka lifted her hand and the flames parted, revealing a doorway of light. "Come," she said. "If you wish to learn, you will see what remains of our memory." Inside, the air was warm and thick with energy. The walls glowed softly, alive with streams of color that moved like water. Each thread of light carried images, faces, voices, the laughter of the dead. "This is the memory vault," she said. "Every Zarathea leaves a part of themselves here when they die. Our thoughts, our songs, our love." Elias stood in silence, awe filling his chest. The voices whispered around him, ancient, sorrowful, beautiful. He could feel their pain, their hope, their pride. "It's incredible," he whispered. "It was our soul," the queen said, "until war burned half of it away." She stepped closer, her light brushing gently against him. "Now tell me, human, if peace is what you seek, what will you give in return?" Elias looked at her, his reflection faint in her glowing skin. "Whatever I can," he said, "even if it's just myself." Her eyes softened. "You speak with courage, but courage alone cannot heal a broken world." "Maybe not," he said, "but it's a start." For the first time since the war began, the Queen of Light and Thorns felt something she had not felt in centuries. It was small, fragile, almost painful. But it was hope. And as she turned away, her voice trembled, not with anger but with something like wonder. "Perhaps," she whispered, "there is more strength in the heart of one human than in all the stars combined." The next morning came not with sunlight, but with a quiet shimmer in the clouds. Halor had no true dawn. The sky was always painted in shades of storm. But the queen's citadel began to glow, and that was how Elias knew the day had started. He had spent the night in a half-collapsed hall of crystal. His campfire flickered weakly inside a cracked metal bowl, its smoke rising into the shadows. The air was cold, sharp, and dry. He could see his breath. Elias had not slept much. The voice of the queen still echoed in his mind, her words carrying the weight of an entire world. "You are brave or foolish." He smiled to himself as he packed up. "Probably both," he murmured again. When he stepped outside, she was already waiting. Sarathka stood at the edge of the ruins, her body framed by rising mist. She looked less like a ruler now, and more like something ancient and lonely, light given a face. Her glow dimmed and brightened with the rhythm of her breathing. "Human," she said softly, her voice carried by the wind. "You survived the night. Few outsiders can stand Halor's storms." Elias shrugged. "I've been through worse. My first command ship was half on fire for 3 days. This feels like vacation." Her lips, if they could be called that, moved in something close to a smile. "Your humor is strange. I do not understand it." "That's okay," he said. "Most people don't." They began to walk through what had once been the heart of her kingdom. The streets were made of smooth black glass, cracked like frozen water. Towers of pale crystal leaned and bent, their surfaces alive with faint blue veins of energy. The wind made them sing, a haunting, endless melody that filled the air with sadness. "These were my people's homes," Sarathka said. "They lived in harmony with the storms. We shaped the lightning, tamed the winds. Halor was alive then, a living jewel in the stars." "What happened?" Elias asked quietly. She stopped walking, The light in her chest flickered darker. "Your kind happened." He didn't answer right away. There was nothing he could say that wouldn't sound hollow. The silence between them felt heavy, like the air before thunder. Finally he said, "That's why I'm here, to make sure it doesn't happen again." She turned to face him, her eyes blazing like twin suns. "And what makes you think you can change what your armies began?" "Because I'm not here to fight," Elias said. His voice didn't rise, but there was steel in it. "I came to listen, to learn what we destroyed so maybe we can build something better." Sarathka studied him, her face unreadable. Then slowly she said, "You speak as though one man can carry the guilt of an entire world." Elias met her gaze. "Someone has to try." They reached the grand bridge of Halor, a long, broken stretch of silver that crossed a canyon filled with violet mist. Beneath it, lightning rolled like a restless sea. As they walked across, Sarathka spoke again. "There was a time when I believed in peace," she said. "Before the fires, before your ships turned our sky black, I reached out to the stars. I offered alliance, trade, knowledge." Her voice trembled, the light around her body flaring brighter. "And in return, I was given war. My people died believing I had failed them." Elias stopped walking. "Maybe you didn't fail them," he said quietly. "Maybe the universe just wasn't ready for something good." Her head tilted slightly. "You speak with such sadness. Have you lost someone too?" He let out a slow breath. "Everyone," he said, "and everything that made me feel like I still belonged somewhere." The Queen's light dimmed. For a moment the storm above them softened, the wind falling silent. Then she said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Perhaps we are not so different, you and I." They reached the far end of the bridge, where a tower rose like a spear into the sky. At its base burned a gentle blue fire. Sarathka lifted her hand and the flames parted, revealing a doorway of light. "Come," she said. "If you wish to learn, you will see what remains of our memory." Inside, the air was warm and thick with energy. The walls glowed softly, alive with streams of color that moved like water. Each thread of light carried images, faces, voices, the laughter of the dead. "This is the memory vault," she said. "Every Zarathea leaves a part of themselves here when they die. Our thoughts, our songs, our love." Elias stood in silence, awe filling his chest. The voices whispered around him, ancient, sorrowful, beautiful. He could feel their pain, their hope, their pride. "It's incredible," he whispered. "It was our soul," the Queen said, "until war burned half of it away." She stepped closer, her light brushing gently against him. "Now tell me, human, if peace is what you seek, what will you give in return?" Elias looked at her, his reflection faint in her glowing skin. "Whatever I can," he said, "even if it's just myself." Her eyes softened. "You speak with courage, but courage alone cannot heal a broken world." "Maybe not," he said, "but it's a start." For the first time since the war began, the Queen of Light and Thorns felt something she had not felt in centuries. It was small, fragile, almost painful. But it was hope. And as she turned away, her voice trembled, not with anger but with something like wonder. "Perhaps," she whispered, "there is more strength in the heart of one human than in all the stars combined." Would you like me to continue with part III, the heart beneath the armor next, keeping this same emotional and cinematic style? You said. Write part 3 of the story 800 words in third person. Keep it emotional, engaging, and simple with basic English. Make it strong and attractive, drawing the reader in. ChatGPT said. Part III, the heart beneath the armor. 800 words. Days passed beneath the violet storms of Halor. The air was still heavy with heat and memory, yet the silence between the Queen and the human had changed. It was no longer cold, no longer full of suspicion. There was something else now, quiet understanding and the first, fragile roots of trust. Elias worked beside the Zarathea every morning. Their forms shimmered like living glass as they moved through the ruins, repairing the broken conduits that once fed power to the Queen's citadel. The humans had destroyed much of their technology during the war, leaving entire cities without energy. Elias knew little of alien machines, but he knew effort. He knew persistence. He lifted heavy shards, fixed cables, and crawled through narrow tunnels filled with blue mist that burned his skin. When the storms grew too fierce, Sarathka herself shielded him with a barrier of light. "You are not made for this world," she said one day as he coughed against the fumes. "Your body weakens, your bones are soft." He wiped sweat from his face and smiled. "Soft maybe, but not broken yet." Her eyes glowed softly. "You risk your life for work that is not yours. Why?" "Because someone has to start rebuilding," he said simply. "And I'm tired of waiting for permission to do the right thing." At night, when the air cooled and the sky turned deep blue, they sat together on the steps of the half-rebuilt citadel. The horizon glowed faintly from distant lightning, and the wind hummed through the broken towers like a sad flute. Sarathka would speak of her people, how they were born from the heart of Halor's sun, shaped by light itself. They once sang to the storms and made the clouds move at their command. They built wonders that floated between planets, cities that lived and breathed. And Elias would listen, always listening. When she paused, he spoke of earth, of oceans and rain and the scent of grass after a storm, of laughter and loss, of a small blue world still fighting to survive its own mistakes. The Queen listened too, her bright eyes dimming to a gentle glow. "You miss your home," she said. "Every day," he admitted. "But I think maybe home isn't a place anymore. Maybe it's what you choose to protect." She tilted her head. "And you would protect a world not your own." Elias looked at her, his gaze steady. "If it deserves saving, yes." The next morning, the Queen led him deep into the heart of the citadel. There, vast halls shimmered with suspended light, threads of energy that danced in the air like fireflies. "This is the core," she said. "It holds what remains of our planet's heart. Without it, Halor will die." Elias stepped closer. The core pulsed softly, its glow rhythmically slowing. "It's fatting," he said. "Yes," she answered. "The damage your kind caused runs deep. We have repaired much, but not enough. The core must be stabilized soon, or the planet will crumble." He frowned, looking at the tangled wires and broken conduits. "What do you need?" She looked at him uncertain. "A connection, something alive, something that can carry energy through what has been lost." He hesitated. "You mean something living?" "Yes," she said softly, "but every Zarathe who has tried has burned away. We are made of light, not blood. The core demands something else, something with warmth, with heart." Her words lingered in the air. Elias understood. She was asking for a sacrifice. And yet, when he looked into her eyes, he didn't see cruelty. He saw sorrow. He smiled faintly. "You're thinking of me, aren't you?" Her glow flickered. "You would die human. Your body cannot hold that kind of power." "Maybe not," he said, "but maybe it can last long enough." The Queen stepped closer. "Why would you give yourself for a world that tried to kill yours?" Elias met her gaze. "Because someone has to show that we can be better." That night she came to him again, her light dim and trembling. "I cannot let you do this," she said. "You've already given too much." Elias looked up from where he sat, repairing a torn section of his suit. "You said once your people sang to the storms," he said quietly. "Then sing for me if I fall." Her voice broke. "You speak as if your death is already decided." He smiled. "Maybe it is, but I'd rather choose how it happens." For a moment neither spoke. The air between them shimmered with quiet tension. Then Sarathka reached out, her hand, if it could be called that, resting on his chest plate. The touch was warm, pulsing like a heartbeat made of starlight. "You are strange, Elias Vance," she whispered. "So fragile, yet I cannot look away." He reached up, placing his gloved hand over hers. "Guess that makes two of us." When dawn came again, Though there was no sun, only light, they stood together before the core. The room hummed with power, a deep, living rhythm. Sarathka's voice was low. If you connect, you will feel everything, every pain, every sorrow this world has known. Few can bear it. Elias took a deep breath. Then it's a good thing I'm stubborn. She looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered something so soft he almost didn't hear it. Do not make me remember loss again. He smiled sadly. Then help me make it worth it. The Queen of Light and Thorns closed her eyes, and for the first time in her long, shining life, she feared the coming of a human heartbeat. Because she knew that beneath his battered armor and scarred skin, there was something stronger than any weapon she had ever seen. There was love. The storms of Halor never stopped. They sang and screamed across the shattered plains, a constant voice of grief for a world that had once been whole. But within the ruins of her citadel, a fragile calm had begun to grow. Ilya stayed. Every day, he rose before the first lightning strike and walked the long, cracked paths with his toolkit strapped to his back. He worked beside the Zerathia, tall beings of crystal and light whose movements were graceful but sad. They watched him with silent curiosity, this small, soft creature who sweated, stumbled, and bled, but never gave up. They had never seen someone like him. Sometimes they whispered to each other in tones like wind chimes. Why does he keep trying? Why doesn't he rest? Why would a human care? Elias never answered. He just kept working. He helped rebuild what he could. The damaged conduits that fed the planet's energy, the broken light towers that guided the storms, the collapsed homes buried beneath ash. His hands shook from exhaustion, his voice rough from breathing Halor's sharp air. But each night, when he looked at the faint glow returning to the city, he smiled. It wasn't much, but it was something. The queen often watched him from afar. Sarathka stood on the high terraces, her form glowing like a living sunrise. She could see the human's heat through the air, his fragile heart beating steadily even as the world fought to crush him. He fascinated her. For centuries, she had known only pride, anger, and silence. But this one man, this mortal who carried more pain than armor, had begun to stir something inside her she could not name. That night, she descended from the towers to where he rested near a broken fountain. The faint shimmer of his firelight reflected off her skin like starlight on glass. "You do not stop," she said softly, "even when your strength fades." Elias looked up. His face was streaked with dirt, his eyes tired but bright. "Someone has to keep moving," he said. "If I stop, the world does too." She tilted her head. "You are strange, Earthling. My people destroy for survival. Your people destroy for greed. Yet you build for neither reason." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I build because it hurts less than breaking things." The queen's glow flickered gently like a heartbeat. "Pain is all that remains when love is gone," she said quietly. "Your kind took ours. Tell me, human, what love do you still have left?" Elias stared into the fire. "Not much," he said, "but maybe enough." Over the following days, their talks grew longer. He told her stories of Earth, of oceans that sparkled like molten silver, of children chasing wind through green fields, of music that could make soldiers cry. She listened, her eyes soft with wonder. She had known 1,000 worlds, yet none sounded as alive as his. In return, Sarathka told him of Halor before the war, how her people shaped storms into songs, how their cities floated on clouds of light, how they once believed sorrow could be sung away. "But when your armies came," she said, "we learned that sorrow has no end. It only changes its face." Elias lowered his head. "I'm sorry." She turned to him, her voice quiet. "You did not fire the weapons." "No," he said, "but I wear their shadow." The queen stepped closer. Her hand brushed the air near his face, never touching, only glowing near his skin. "Your shadow carries warmth," she whispered. "It is strange to me. Your weakness feels strong." He chuckled softly. That's humans for you. We break easily, but we keep getting up. She looked at him for a long time. Then maybe, she said, we were wrong to think you were made only for destruction. Later, a storm came that even she could not calm. The sky tore open with silver fire. Winds howled like the cries of ghosts. The Zerathii fled into the depths of the citadel, their bodies flickering from the overload of energy. But Elias stayed above. He fought against the wind, struggling to secure the cables they had repaired earlier. Sparks danced across his arms, burning his suit. The queen appeared at the edge of the platform, light flaring wildly around her. "Elias," she called out, "you cannot stand against this storm." "Then help me stop it," he shouted back, holding onto the conduit as it shook. Sarathka raised her hands. Energy flowed from her palms, spreading into the clouds like threads of light. Together, they fought to calm the fury of her world. The air trembled. The lightning bent around them, striking harmlessly into the ground. And then it was over. The storm broke into rain. Soft, silver drops fell across the broken city, cooling the burning ground. Elias fell to his knees, gasping, while the queen stood beside him, her glow dim and trembling. He looked up at her. "You did it." Her voice wavered. "We did." For a moment, the only sound was the gentle fall of rain. Sarathka knelt beside him, her light wrapping around them both. She studied his face, the lines of exhaustion, the faint scars. To her, he looked like something both fragile and eternal, a creature made to die, yet too stubborn to yield. "Your heart," she whispered, "beats louder than the storms of Halor." Elias smiled weakly. "Then maybe it can teach them to quiet down." She laughed softly, the sound like chimes breaking through thunder. And as the rain fell, the Queen of Light reached out and placed her hand over his chest plate. Through the thin metal, she could feel the rhythm of his heart. For a long time, she stayed like that, silent, glowing faintly in the darkness, feeling the warmth of something she had never known before. Something not born of fire or light, but of life. The peace did not last. Halor's storms grew louder again, their voices no longer songs but screams. Deep within the planet's heart, something old and terrible had begun to wake. Elias could feel it in the ground, a low, trembling pulse that grew stronger each day. The air shimmered with heat, and even the queen's light seemed restless. The Zerathii whispered among themselves, fearful. They spoke of the Renfire, a weapon from their ancient wars, one so powerful it could unmake a world. Sarathka had sealed it long ago, vowing it would never be touched again. But now that seal was breaking. One evening, as the violet sun sank behind the shattered mountains, the queen stood on the balcony of her citadel. Elias found her there, her body glowing brighter than ever, her face etched with sorrow. "It has begun," she said softly. "My people have awakened the Renfire." He froze. Why would they do that? "To end their suffering," she whispered. "They believe death is kinder than living under the memory of defeat." Lightning flashed across the horizon, painting her in white fire. Elias stepped closer. "You can still stop it." Her glow flickered. "No one can stop what has already been set in motion. The weapon feeds on our world's core. It will burn until nothing remains." He shook his head. "Then tell me where it is. We'll shut it down together." Sarathka looked at him, and for a moment her voice trembled. "You would walk into the fire for a world that is not yours." Elias smiled faintly. "I already did once. Guess I didn't learn my lesson." They descended into the Undercity that night. The air grew hotter the deeper they went. The walls changed from crystal to molten stone. Streams of blue fire ran like rivers beneath their feet. The queen's light was the only thing that kept the darkness away. She led the way, her movements swift, her voice a faint melody guiding him through the twisting tunnels. Elias followed, sweat dripping down his neck, his suit's cooling system failing. They reached the old vault, a massive door of black glass carved with ancient symbols. Beyond it, a glow pulsed like a dying star. Sarathka raised her hand. The door shuddered and slid open, revealing the heart of destruction. The Renfire was a sphere of pure energy, suspended in the air by chains of light. Its surface burned with every color and none at all. Around it, shards of crystal floated, humming with unstable power. "It's beautiful," Elias whispered. "It's death," she said, "and it was made by my ancestors." He stepped closer. "Can we stop it?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, but only if we bind it. One life must merge with it to still its hunger. Only then will it sleep again." Elias turned toward her, realization dawning. "You mean you?" She looked away. "It must be me. The Renfire was created by the royal line. Only my essence can seal it." Elias' voice broke. "If you do that, you'll die." Her light dimmed. "Then let me die for something that still matters." The ground began to shake. Cracks of molten light spread across the chamber. The weapon roared, hungry and wild. Sarathka stepped toward it, her glow flaring into brilliance. Elias reached out and grabbed her arm. "Wait." She looked back at him. For the first time, her eyes were not the eyes of a queen, but of someone afraid. "I was born to guard my people," she said softly, "but I failed them. Let me make this right." "You already did," Elias said, gripping her tighter. "You gave them hope again. You gave me hope again. Don't take that away." The light around them trembled. The Renfire screamed, its energy lashing out like whips of lightning. One struck the floor near Elias, throwing him backward. His visor cracked. His ears rang. Sarathka cried out, reaching toward him. "Elias." He pushed himself up, coughing blood. "You're not doing this alone," he rasped. "You cannot survive," she shouted. He stumbled toward her. "Then we'll fail together." The queen hesitated. For the first time in all her centuries, someone was standing with her, not beneath her, not against her, but beside her. She placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heart's faint rhythm through the broken armor. "Your heart," she whispered, "was never meant to carry my light." He smiled. "Guess it's time to find out." She closed her eyes. "If you die, then at least you won't be alone." And with that, he stepped into the fire with her. The Renfire screamed like a living sun. Light exploded across the chamber, flooding every shadow. Elias felt his body burning, every nerve alive with pain and brilliance. He could hear her voice inside his mind, soft and breaking. "Let go, Elias." "Can't. You will die. So will everyone if I don't help." The light tore through him, yet something within refused to break. He saw flashes, earth, blue and distant, the faces of the dead, the promise he made to be better. And then through the storm, her voice again, small, almost human. "Why?" He smiled through the pain. "Because someone has to show you what mercy looks like." The weapon's roar faded, the air grew still. When the light dimmed, Sarathka stood in the center of the chamber, holding the human in her arms. The Renfire had gone quiet, its colors fading into darkness. Her glow was faint now, trembling. She looked down at Elias, his armor cracked, his face pale but peaceful. She pressed her forehead to his. "Foolish earthling," she whispered, her voice breaking like glass. "You gave everything for a world that was never yours." Outside, the storms fell silent for the first time in centuries. The sky of Halor turned soft and golden. And in that stillness, the Queen of Light and Thorns wrapped herself in human arms and wept. Would you like me to continue with Part V, the touch of fire and light, where the aftermath unfolds and... When the light faded, silence took the world. No thunder, no wind, no sound at all, only the soft hum of what remained. The Renfire's chamber, once alive with violence, now glowed faintly with dying embers. Crystals hung motionless in the air, their glow sinking into darkness like stars at dawn. And at the center of it all stood Sarathka, Queen of Halor, her radiance dim, her body trembling. In her arms lay the human, Elias Vance, his armor cracked, his skin pale beneath streaks of ash. She looked down at him, unable to breathe. Zarathea did not breathe, but in that moment she wished she could, just to feel him stir. "Elias," she whispered, voice breaking like a fatting song, "open your eyes." He didn't move. The queen fell to her knees, holding him closer, her light wrapping around his broken frame like a fragile cocoon. She could feel no energy, no warmth, only stillness. "No," she said, her tone trembling. "You cannot leave me, not now." For centuries, Sarathka had watched her people live and die like fireflies in the storm. She had never wept for them. She had never been allowed to. Queens were not made for grief. But for the first time, the light that formed her body began to flicker with something deeper than pain. Tears of silver spilled from her eyes, falling onto his armor. Each drop glowed and sank into his skin, leaving trails of faint light that pulsed like weak heartbeats. She bent her head until her forehead touched his. "You burned for us," she whispered. "You gave your small, short life to save a world that cursed you. Why?" The air was still. Then somewhere deep within him she felt it, faint but real, a single pulse. A heartbeat. Her eyes widened. "Elias." His chest rose, slow and shallow. His lips moved, barely forming words. "Still here." A sound left her that was almost laughter, almost a sob. Her hands shook as she cradled his face. "You stubborn creature," she said softly. "Even the fire could not take you." He opened one eye, struggling to focus on the glowing figure above him. "Told you," he rasped. "Humans bad at dying." She laughed again, a sound that shimmered like broken glass catching light. "Rest, Earthling, you have done enough." "Not yet," he whispered, before sleep took him again. Days passed, though time had little meaning under Halor's wounded sky. Sarathka carried Elias back to the citadel, her form flickering weakly with every step. The Renfire's energy had drained much of her essence, but she refused to fade. She laid him in her private chamber, once a throne room, now a sanctuary of silence. There she watched over him. Every day she sang to him, soft and wordless songs of light, melodies once used to heal her kind. Her voice filled the hall like sunlight spilling through cracks. Slowly, faintly, his color returned. When he finally opened his eyes again, the first thing he saw was her glow hovering beside him. "Morning," he croaked, his voice dry. She smiled. "You have slept through 3." He looked around weakly. The room was quiet, filled with a soft blue haze. "We made it." She nodded. "The Renfire is gone. The planet breathes again. You did what no Zarathea could." He frowned. "We did." Her light dimmed, tender. "No, you carried the fire when I could not." He tried to sit up, grimacing at the pain, but she stopped him with a gentle touch. Her fingers brushed his forehead, cool and bright. "Rest," she said. "You are safe." He caught her hand before she could pull away. His fingers were rough, human. Hers were smooth, glowing like glass. The contrast made her tremble. "Sarathka," he whispered, "I'm not sure what I saved. Your world, you, maybe both, but if I did, don't waste it." She stared at him for a long time, her voice quiet. "I will not." As he healed, they walked the rebuilt halls together. The queen showed him the first sprouts of new light's tiny glowing vines that crept across the ground, born from the energy of the healed core. "Halor is alive again," she said. Elias smiled, leaning on a metal cane he'd made from broken armor. "Then it was worth it." The queen turned toward him. "Your world will sing of you if you return, a human who stopped the wrath of a dying star." He shook his head. "Earth doesn't sing for people like me." She studied him, her light flickering softly. "Then Halor will." Her hand lifted, brushing against his cheek. The touch made his heart race, not from pain, but from something gentler, something frighteningly human. "Why do you look at me like that?" she asked, her voice soft. "Because I almost lost you," he said. Her glow pulsed. "I am not easy to lose." "Neither am I," he murmured. For a moment the silence between them was full, not empty. She could feel his warmth and he could feel her light. Two beings from different worlds, bound by something that neither language nor logic could explain. That night, as Halor's twin moons rose above the glass plains, Sarethka came to his side again. He was standing at the balcony, staring at the glowing horizon. Without a word, she stepped behind him, wrapping her luminous arms around his chest. He froze for a heartbeat, then let himself lean into her warmth. "You should rest," she said. He smiled faintly. "If I sleep, I'll wake up and find this was a dream." She pressed closer, her voice no longer the tone of a queen, but of something softer. "Then stay awake a little longer." He turned to face her. The stormlight reflected in her eyes, and for the first time he saw not a goddess, but a soul. "I was alone for so long," she whispered. "Until you came, you gave me more than peace. You gave me purpose again." Elias touched her hand gently. "And you gave me something to fight for." Her glow deepened, warm and trembling. Then she leaned forward, resting her head against his shoulder. "I belong to you, Earthling," she whispered. And as the night wind whispered through the silent city, the Queen of Light and the Soldier of Dust stood together, fire and flesh, bound by what neither of their worlds could name. Halor lived again. Where once the air had been thick with ash and fire, soft winds now moved through the crystal canyons. The violet storms had grown gentle, their lightning no longer weapons but light shows across the endless sky. The ground, once scorched, now shimmered with veins of new growth, glowing vines that hummed faintly, like a heartbeat beneath the soil. And in the rebuilt citadel, two beings, one born of light, one of blood, stood together and watched the dawn return. Elias Vance had changed. The fire that nearly killed him had left more than scars. Faint threads of light ran beneath his skin now, glowing softly when he was near the Queen. The Zaratha called him the Burning One, half in fear, half in awe. But he didn't feel like a legend. He felt like a man trying to learn how to live again. Sarethka watched him often from the balcony, her radiant form now calmer, softer. The ancient rage that once fueled her had burned away, leaving behind something gentler, something human. "You walk among my people as if you were one of them," she said one morning, her tone carrying both pride and disbelief. Elias smiled, brushing dust from his hands. "They needed help rebuilding the West Towers. I couldn't just stand there." She tilted her head, the light in her eyes flickering like laughter. "No one told you to." "No one had to," he said quietly. The city rose slowly from its ruins. The Zarathea worked with new purpose, their movements filled with a kind of peace that hadn't touched their world in generations. They sang as they built, songs that echoed through the air like waves of music. Elias joined them each day, though his strength wasn't what it used to be. His hands trembled when he worked too long, and sometimes the light in his veins pulsed painfully. The Queen saw it, though he tried to hide it. One evening, she found him resting by the river of molten glass that cut through the city. He sat with his boots half buried in glowing sand, staring at the reflections of two moons on the surface. "You are weakening," she said softly as she approached. He didn't look up, just tired. "You lie poorly," she said, sitting beside him. The ground glowed faintly under her weight. "The fire changed you. Your body holds part of Halor's light now. It was not meant for a human frame." He gave a small laugh. "Guess that makes me part alien." Her eyes dimmed, full of worry. "It will burn you, Elias, slowly." He turned to her, smiling despite the pain. "Then I'll burn for something beautiful." She was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out, her hand brushing against his. The warmth that passed between them was soft and aching. "I could take it from you," she whispered. "Draw the energy out, save you." "And kill yourself in the process," he said. "I know you, Sarethka. You'd give everything for one life. But that's not how peace works. It's not about dying for others. It's about living for them." Her light wavered. You speak as if you are not afraid of the end." He looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of leaving things unfinished." The queen stood, her glow brightened, golden and fierce. "Then let us finish it," she said. "Let us make sure this world will never need saving again." And so they worked. Together they led the rebuilding of Halor. Elias shared human designs, bridges of steel, systems of flow and irrigation. The Zarathai merged them with their living energy, creating cities that breathed and shimmered, alive and aware. The queen gave her people new purpose, teaching them that strength could come from compassion, that mercy could build what war had destroyed. And the humans, hearing the signal Elias sent through the stars, finally answered. Months later, the first human ship landed on Halor, not for conquest but for peace. The soldiers who stepped out bowed before the queen, their weapons left behind. Sarathka looked at them, then at Elias. "Is this how it begins again?" she asked softly. He nodded. "It's how it should have started the first time." The queen raised her voice, her words ringing across the plain. "Let no blood fall here again. We build now together." The Zarathai echoed her in song, and the humans joined. For the first time, two races that had once destroyed each other stood side by side beneath a golden sky. But peace always comes with a cost. Each day, the light within Elias grew stronger and harder to contain. Sometimes, when the energy flared too bright, his skin would glow through his shirt and his pulse would thunder like a drum. Sarathka saw it. She said nothing at first, but one night when he stumbled and nearly fell, she caught him in her arms. "Enough," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You cannot keep this inside you. It is tearing you apart." He leaned against her, exhausted. "Maybe, but if it's the price for what we've built." "No," her voice cracked, fierce and full of pain. "You are not a sacrifice, not anymore." He looked up at her, his hand lifting to touch her face. "Then promise me something," he said softly. "Anything. When I'm gone, don't let them forget what we did." Her eyes glowed brighter like suns behind tears. "You will not go," she said. "I will not allow it." But deep inside, she knew. She could feel his light fading and her own growing stronger in its place, as if part of him was already becoming part of her. When the dawn rose the next morning, the queen stood alone on the balcony, watching the horizon blaze with gold. She could still feel the echo of his warmth inside her chest, soft, human, eternal. Halor was alive again, so was hope. But as the light touched her skin, she whispered to the wind, her voice barely audible. "Don't leave me, Earthling. The world still needs your heart." And somewhere, carried by the morning air, she thought she heard his voice answer. Gentle, steady, full of that same stubborn strength. "I'm not gone. I'm just part of the light now." The moons of Halor hung low in the sky, silver and soft, watching over a world reborn. The storms that had once torn the heavens apart now drifted gently, like tired ghosts finally at peace. The city glowed below, half crystal, half steel, a living bridge between two civilizations. But one chamber in the high citadel remained dim. The Queen of Light and Thorn stood there, silent and still, staring at the empty space beside her throne. She no longer sat upon it. It felt wrong now, too distant, too proud. It had been weeks since Elias Vance's light had faded from her arms. Yet she could still feel him, like warmth trapped inside her chest, a pulse that would not die. When the wind whispered through the open walls, she almost thought it was his voice. "Keep building, Sarath, keep going." She would close her eyes and answer into the quiet. "I am trying." And sometimes the silence almost felt like it listened. The humans had stayed. They worked with the Zarathai, teaching and learning, building and dreaming. Together they forged new machines powered by both steel and living energy. They called it the Union of Halor. And though they spoke of peace and progress, there was always one name that hung unspoken between them: Elias Vance, the human who had stood in fire and turned death into life. Every monument they built carried his mark. Every child who learned the story of the war learned his name. To the Zerathia, he was the heart of flame. To the humans, he was the man who stood with light. But to Sarathka, he was still just Elias, the man who made her believe she could be more than a weapon. One evening, as the sky turned gold and the horizon shimmered with lightning, Sarathka walked beyond the city. She followed the old path to the canyon where the Renfire once slept. The earth there was quiet now, healed and green, dotted with silver vines that glowed faintly in the dark. At the center of the plain stood a single stone, smooth, black, and alive with faint human etchings. Elias' name was carved into it in both tongues, human letters and Zerathai sigils that shimmered with light. She knelt before it, tracing the letters with her hand. "I rebuilt this world," she said softly, "just as you asked, but it is not enough." The wind stirred her hair. She closed her eyes. "You told me peace means living for others, but how do I live without you?" There was no answer, only the faint hum of the planet breathing. She bowed her head, her voice trembling. "You gave me your light, Elias, and I am still too weak to bear it." A soft glow began to rise around her. The ground pulsed faintly, and the vines shifted, their light flickering in rhythm with a heartbeat. Then she heard it. A voice, quiet, warm, human. "You're not weak, Sarath, you never were." Her eyes flew open. The air shimmered before her, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw him. He stood in the light like a dream made of memory. His body was translucent, made of faint fire and starlight, but his eyes were the same, calm, kind, impossibly alive. "Elias," she breathed, "is it you?" He smiled, that same crooked, tired smile she had once seen beneath the ash. "Guess I couldn't stay gone. You kept too much of me with you." Tears of light welled in her eyes. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't," he said softly. "Part of me's here, part of me in the core, part of me in you. Guess I've got good real estate." She laughed through her tears, still foolish. "Still human," he said. The glow around him flickered. She reached out, her hand trembling as it passed through his form. "I cannot touch you," she whispered. "Doesn't matter," he said. "You don't need to." "How can I live like this?" she asked, half of me missing. "You're not missing anything," he said gently. "You carry everything we fought for, every choice, every moment. You are the light now, Sarath." The image of him began to fade, the edges dissolving into the air. "Wait," she whispered. "Don't go, not yet." He smiled again. "Hey, I'm not really gone. Look up when the storms flash. That's me, reminding you to keep fighting the good fight." "Elias." "Sarath," his voice softened. "You saved me too. You taught me what it means to belong." The glow dimmed further. His figure was almost gone now, a faint outline of light in the fading dusk. "Don't let them forget," he said. "Not the pain, not the hope." She nodded, tears falling freely. "I won't." "And one more thing." She blinked. "Yes." He smiled. "Don't spend forever waiting for me. Live okay, live like the fire never ended." The last flicker of his light drifted upward, fading into the night sky. Sarathka stood alone beneath the twin moons. Her hands trembled, but her heart felt steady for the first time in years. She lifted her gaze to the stars, bright, endless, alive, and smiled through her tears. "Live," she whispered. "Yes, Earthling, I will." She turned toward the city in the distance, where lights shimmered like constellations. Her people were waiting. So were the humans. The future was waiting. And though her heart still ached with the weight of loss, she felt him there. In every glow, in every storm, in every quiet breath the planet took. The Queen of Light walked back toward her people, her steps slow but certain. The air shimmered softly around her, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled gently across the sky, like laughter carried by the wind. She paused, smiling at the sound. "I hear you," she whispered, "always." and as she vanished into the glow of dawn, the stars above Halor seemed to burn a little brighter, as if an unseen voice had whispered back, "I belong to you, Seraph." Weeks passed. The storms over Vyrlia were gone, and the air had turned soft and clear. The twin suns rose each day over a city that was learning to live again. New lights glowed in the streets. Flowers pushed through the cracks in the stone. Peace had come, quiet, fragile peace. And yet, Elias Ward could feel the truth inside him. He was fading. At first it was small things, his steps slower, his breath shorter. Then came the pain deep in his chest where the bond had once burned. His strength was no longer his own. It belonged to her. Still, he smiled through it. He worked beside the Queen's people, helped rebuild their machines, taught the young ones how to use Earth's tools. Wherever he went, the Zerathi bowed their glowing heads to him. They called him the flame that walks, the living bridge, the human who carried the sun. He didn't like the titles. He didn't need them. The only thing that mattered was seeing Lyra smile again. One morning he found her sitting at the edge of the gardens. The green had returned now, soft grass, living vines, the first real signs of life since the war. She was humming softly, her small hands playing with a cluster of bright blue flowers. When she saw him, she grinned. "Elias," she said, running toward him, "look, they're alive again." He chuckled, crouching to her level. "You did that." "Maybe," she said with a proud little tilt of her head. "I just wanted them to grow, and they did." He smiled. "Guess your power's good for more than just breaking things." Her laughter echoed through the courtyard, bright and warm. Then her eyes softened as she looked at him. "You're tired again." He hesitated, a little. "You always say that," she whispered. "But it's more than a little, isn't it?" Elias wanted to lie, to tell her everything was fine, that he'd be okay. But when he met her gaze, he saw her mother's wisdom in those blue-silver eyes. She already knew. "It's the bond," he said quietly. "Every time you grow stronger, a little of me fades, but don't you worry, that's how it's supposed to be." Lyra frowned. "That's not fair." "Fair doesn't matter," he said gently. "You're alive, that's enough for me." She pressed her small hand against his chest, right over his heart. "It's still beating." He smiled faintly. "It always will, maybe not for me but for you." That evening, the Queen summoned him to the throne hall. She was waiting in the dim light, her glow calm but her expression troubled. "Elias," she said softly, "your strength weakens by the day. My healers cannot stop it. You have given too much." He nodded. "I know." "I cannot ask this of you," she whispered. "You have already saved us." "You didn't ask," he said simply. "I chose." She lowered her head. "Then let me choose now. Let me release you from the bond." He frowned. "Release me." "There is a ritual," she said, stepping closer. "It will cut the bond between your life and hers. She will live, but you will fade completely. There will be no return." Elias was silent for a long time. The sound of the wind filled the hall, carrying faint music from the revived gardens. Finally, he said, "If that's what it takes to keep her safe, then do it." The Queen's silver eyes glistened. "You would give the last of your light." He smiled, tired but sincere. "You once called me the heart that refuses to break. Maybe it's time I proved you right." The ritual began at dawn. The Queen and her priest stood in a circle around the crystal cradle, the same cradle where Lyra had once slept, dying. Now it glowed bright and full of life. Lyra stood at the center, trembling, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to do this," she whispered. "I can't lose you." Elias knelt before her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Hey," he said softly, "you'll never lose me. I'll still be here in your heart, in your strength. Every time you feel courage, every time you choose kindness, that's me." Her lips quivered. "That's not enough." "It has to be," he said. She clung to him, sobbing quietly, her small fingers gripping his sleeve. "Promise me you won't be gone forever." He swallowed hard. I promise I'll always be part of you." The queen's voice broke through the air, low and steady, ancient words humming with light. The circle around them began to glow, beams of silver rising toward the sky. Elias felt warmth spreading through his body, like sunlight melting into his veins. He looked at Lyra one last time and whispered, "Keep shining, kiddo." Then the light took him. When it was over, silence filled the hall. The queen fell to her knees, exhausted. The glow faded slowly from the air, leaving behind only stillness. Lyra stood in the center, shaking, her glow dim but steady. She felt different, lighter, stronger, but her heart ached with emptiness. "Mother," she whispered. Lysara lifted her head. "It is done." Lyra turned slowly toward the spot where Elias had been. There was nothing, no body, no sound, only a faint shimmer in the air, like heat over sand. But then she heard it, a heartbeat, one slow, steady beat inside her chest and nowhere else. She placed her hand over her heart and smiled through her tears. "He's still here," she whispered. The queen stood beside her, tears falling like silver rain. "Yes," she said softly, "the human lives within you now. His heart beats with yours." Years later, they would tell stories of the man from the stars, the one who gave his soul to save the light of another world. They said his fire burned so bright that even death could not take it away. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the twin suns set and the stars began to sing, the queen and her daughter would look toward the heavens and swear they saw a faint blue light shining among them, the light of a human heart that refused to die.